Scandal,
Murder,
lore,
intrigue.
I'm Ravinia,
And I'm Lindsay.
and we're talking about the people and relationships.
That made for some scandalicious headlines across the country.
So come join the class.
We're here to give you the rundown. Okay, so today I'm running this episode and we are going to talk about JonBenet Ramsey. We're going to go through all the details, but I'm really going to try to convince you, Ravinia, and everyone else that it was someone in her family. Someone in that house did it. I am convinced, but this is all my opinion. This is all alleged. This is all my opinion. And
Alleged for entertainment purposes only.
yes. So tell me what you know about it. About the case or like anything.
I remember hearing about this like when it happened. I mean, aren't we like the same age as her, more or less?
It happened in 1996 and she was 6. So
Okay.
yeah.
I remember, like looking, first of all, it was like a total something that shocked the world, well, nation, I guess.
Yeah.
And I remember we would go to like the grocery store, and as you were checking out, you know how they have like the racks of magazines, they'd have like the Salacious magazines, and they would just have her beauty pageant pictures like, plastered everywhere, and it was like, who killed JonBenet? I just remember it scared me a lot. Yeah.
I know, yeah, because we were little, and I'm sure it scared our parents a lot because they had kids our age, or her age, and yeah, it took the world by storm, and it's one of those mysteries that we still do not know. Police still do not know. Nobody knows except the killer, or maybe other people. But a lot of people have come out of the woodwork and confessed, done those like false confessions, and none of them have turned out to be true. We're gonna focus on of course, all the details of what happened, but how like it kind of pushes you towards thinking, right. Was it her mom? Was it her dad? Was it her brother? Like, was it all of them? What is happening? So,
I know who I think it was, but I'm sure we'll get to a portion where we could discuss like all that. Yes. But really quick, how old was she when she died?
She was 6.
Oh gosh, she was a baby. God.
Yeah.
So sad.
And then we'll see if you change your mind.
Okay.
We're done. Okay, so it is Christmas 1996. So like peak 90s. You got like, we can tell by just this picture right here and what you have in the background. So everybody always uses the like pageant pictures, so I tried to find ones of her just showing that she was just a normal little girl. So Christmas 1996, the Ramsey family consists of JonBenet Ramsey, so that is his first, middle, and last name, so they made her name JonBenet after him, so she is like named after him. Patsy is the wife, you see right there in the red with the cross like glowing all
right, it's reflecting.
And then Burke is 9 at the time, and he's the older brother. So she's 6 years old. This is obviously at Christmas earlier, but on Christmas Day, she's 6 years old and Burke is 9. So they live in an enormous house. So you can see the picture of the house I'm showing, and this is on your background as well. This is the picture that they show, and the house doesn't look that big. It kind of, it doesn't, I won't say small, but it looks like medium size. So to really understand the story, I think it's imperative to see just how big this house is. It is ginormous. Yeah,
you're
I know,
right. The front of the house, I guess it's because all the shrubbery and stuff, but it's very deceiving how big this house really is.
Yes, yeah.
And where in the country are they from?
So they're in Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, that's funny because this looks like a upper like East Coast like rich family. I would not.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it looks like a McMansion or something.
No, it actually looks like a very legit. No, it does not give me McMansion vibes. It gives me Victorian, like actual mansion vibes. But yeah, they look like an East Coast family, but I'm surprised.
Well, I know that he is from Atlanta. One of them are from Atlanta, like from the East Coast, but it's not like they built this house or anything. But yeah, so the house is 7,000 square feet. It has Yeah, 4 floors, including the basement. So JonBenet's room is on the left where you see the balcony. So, like, the
Okay.
middle floor. So hers has a balcony, too, which is something to think of, if she was, like, attacked, if it was
Yeah.
someone outside of the house. She has her own balcony, and she is on this side of the house by herself. The house is kind of um, like a rectangle. It's more like narrow and long than it is wide. So she's at the house, this side of the house by herself, and then on the other side, on the same floor, is Burke's room, and then right up above him on the 4th floor is John and Patsy's room, and they have like huge closets
So
and
Burke
stuff.
is the brother. I wasn't sure that
Yes.
was his name. Okay.
Yes, so Burke is her brother. So she was separated too, which a lot of people think is weird because she was the youngest, and I don't know, she was kind of far away from them. So if something did happen in her room, a lot of people don't think that they could have heard because they were so far away. And there
Yeah.
was other bedrooms in the house that she could have been in. John was married before and has 2 kids. So they had their rooms in the house when they went to stay. But hers was like the farthest. So, okay. So they have a normal Christmas morning, a lush Christmas probably because they're very well off. So I'm sure the kids got boatloads of presents that morning. I know
Yeah.
JonBenet got a new bike that she never got to ride. So after they open presents, they go over a friend's house. So this is one of the pictures. I'm not sure if this is from the Christmas or one earlier, but they have a neighbor. Their last name is White, and they went over their house. So a bunch of the neighbors and friends and family came over, and Santa Claus came. So the kids are having fun, and parents are drinking, eating, having a blast. It's Christmas Day, and they basically spend the whole day there. So, JonBenet falls asleep in the car. This is now according to Patsy and John because, once they get home, any story that's told is according to them. So, according to John, he carried JonBenet from the car because she fell asleep into her room, and then Patsy tucked her in, and that was the last time, according to them, that they've ever seen her alive. So, around 5 a.m. that morning, they have a flight to Michigan. So I believe Patsy's from Michigan, and so they had a flight to go there the next day. So she wakes up at 5 a.m. and she's walking down these spiral steps that you see right here. And laying on the steps are 3 pieces of paper right next to each other. And
Okay.
it is the ransom note. So I do want to mention that Patsy is wearing the same clothes as she was the night before. This is just something to like keep in your mind. Like,
Okay.
they have a Christmas day, they go to sleep, and somehow she wakes up, quote unquote, finds the ransom letter, and then everything starts. But she's in her same clothes, like someone
Okay.
with money. She was a pageant queen herself. She cared about what she looked like, cared about what people, you just think that like she would have pajamas out. Like she, it just,
Right.
that always really got me. That I was like, did she ever really go to sleep?
Right.
So, the ransom letter. I'm gonna read this all to you. So it's
Okay.
3 pages long. Think about that too. A ransom letter. You're kidnapping this girl, and you sit down in that house.
You take your
and
time to pen
Yeah.
a letter.
Yeah, you write a 3-page letter. It seems kind of weird. So
Yikes.
she sees
Okay.
it on the step. She picks it up. This is what it says. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business. Business is spelt wrong, by the way. But not the country it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession, and possession is also spelt wrong. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money, and hence an earlier delivery is crossed out, pickup of your daughter. It's like a lot of words.
God.
Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The 2 gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you do not provoke them. Speaking to anyone about this situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement, countermeasures, and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter. If you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are being under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Do not try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. Victory. And then it's signed the letters SBTC. What do you think of this? What are your thoughts about this ridiculous ransom letter?
Well, first of all, okay, there's a couple. Well, you already mentioned one. It's 3 pages, WTF. I mean, you would think.
Yeah.
And then it's also very convoluted. It's like, okay, well, you're going to do this and drop this off and then deliver this. And it's like, no. And then the weird thing is, like, what's with the, like, very specific money. What is it? Okay. The
118,000.
I'm just like, girl, what? It's
Weird. That 118,000 we will talk about. Because
like, where does the 18 come from? Like 100,000, a million? It's like plus the 18. I don't know. It's weird.
So let me tell you what, the weird things that kind of match up with the family members from this letter. So the ransom note is written on a notepad taken from Patsy's desk. So they definitely wrote it there. And a pen from their kitchen.
Okay.
So that proves that, this person didn't show up with the letter. They sat on at your kitchen counter and wrote it.
Penned this letter. Wow.
Yeah. So there were 2 practice notes found in the trash can as well. So I think they timed like how long it would take someone to write the letter, and they said like 19 minutes or something, and then it's like, yeah, and the practice letters, and it's just like, you're not afraid of somebody waking up, like, so the 118,000 is the exact amount that John Ramsey was given for a Christmas bonus from work.
Oh God, come on. Oh, shit.
Yeah, it was 118,000 in some sense. And I like double checked this. I'm like, I've always heard that it was the same amount, and it is.
Oh my God. Between the practice letters and then the bonus, I'm like, it had to have been them.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's like, it's so easy. I'm like already convincing you. It's like a lot of times the simplest answer is the answer. And
well, I'm curious, does anyone actually believe that it was like that, of, because I know you do a lot of research and you've been into this case, does anyone actually believe it wasn't someone in the house at this point? Is anyone advocating that?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people, and there is someone who is, I think, a well-known detective or somebody well-known in the industry that is like convinced that somebody broke in through the basement window because there was a window broken there, but there weren't any footprints. And there are people who have even made documentaries about how it's not, it's not the family, it had to be someone else. Yeah.
Dang.
Okay. So the handwriting has over 200 similarities to Patsy's handwriting. They tested everybody's handwriting.
It does.
Yeah. And so I'm excited to tell you about this because you're very into movies. I don't know if you've seen any of these because they're kind of like old, but a lot of the aspects from the note are similar to quotes from movies that came out that year.
Oh,
so the movie Dirty Harry.
Okay.
It says, if you talk to anyone, I don't care if it's a Pekingese pissing against a lamppost, the girl dies. And then in the movie Speed, it's somebody says, do not attempt to grow a brain. Just like they said, do not attempt to grow a brain, John. In the movie Nick of Time, I think I have, so in the movie Nick of Time, he says, you talk to a cop, you even look at a cop too long and your daughter's dead, I'll kill her myself, cut the head right off in front of you. And then in the movie Ruthless People, which I didn't know it had Danny DeVito and
Bette Midler.
So I feel like this other lady, until I looked it up, but they say, if you notify the police, your wife will be killed. If you notify the media, she will be killed. If you deviate from our instructions in any way whatsoever, she will be killed. Do you understand?
Oh God.
So one of these movies as well. I think it's Nick of Time. One of somebody who was staying with the family that the Christmas party was held at.
Okay.
Said that movie was on that night, and because he watched it. So it's like maybe they watched it before bed. Like so many things, the tone of the letter, and the letter sounds like it's out of a movie. It's,
yeah, that was the other thing I was gonna say. Like, we go back to the letter really quick. So it starts off with, "We respect your business, but not the country that it serves." That sounds like some weird terrorist spy movie or something. That line kind of was like, okay, I roll.
I know, and like we're a small foreign faction. Like, what the fuck does that
Like
mean?
the Taliban or something. I know that this was before 9/11, but I know that there was already like fear with, Middle Eastern tensions. Like we had Desert Storm and stuff like this. So, I mean, she's playing into, well, I'm saying like the mom she did. I'm like, she's playing
totally
into
wrote
that.
Yeah.
Oh, 100% that woman wrote it. Yeah, Patsy.
We're already convinced.
Yeah, it sounds very silly.
So after Patsy reads this letter, according to her, she runs upstairs to JonBenet's room. This is a picture of JonBenet's room from that night.
Sorry, I had that exact same Beauty and the Beast. I even have pictures of it. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. So she sees she's not there, and she yells for John. So they go down to the kitchen and they call the police. They do the opposite of what the ransom note says too. It says, "Do not call the police." But they call the police. So I'm going to play you the 911 call. So it's first going to play, this YouTube video is first going to play the call. And then at the end, you can hear the operator say, "Patsy, Patsy, Patsy." And it's really, really hard to tell what they're saying. No one knows what they're saying, but Patsy thought she hung up the phone and she didn't. And she's saying, you can at least hear her say like, "Help me, help me." Like, oh my gosh. But it sounds like, I'll tell you this before, so maybe you can listen for it. It sounds like somebody saying, "What did you do?" Like they're talking to Burke in the room, and then a male voice saying, "We're not speaking to you right now." And then a child's voice saying, "What did you find?"
Oh,
But I'm telling you, you're not going to be able to like really hear that. You can hear her saying like, "Jesus, help me." But analysts have gone through, so we'll talk about that after, like how they've like, audio analysts have gone through it and everything. But let's play the video.
911 emergency. Police. What's going on? 5515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am?
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please.
Explain to me what's going on, okay?
There's a note left and our daughter's gone.
A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter?
6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old.
How long ago was it?
I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's
Does
gone.
it say who took her?
What?
Does it say who took her?
I don't know. There's a ransom note here.
It's a ransom note?
It says SBTC. Victory. Please.
Okay, what's your name? Are you
Kathy Ramsey, I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please.
I'm sending an officer over, okay?
Please.
Do you know how long she's been
No,
gone?
I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please.
Okay, well,
There's somebody.
I am, honey.
Please.
Take a deep breath,
Please,
okay?
hurry.
Patsy, 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 Patsy.
Okay, so you really cannot tell, like you can't hear, or you can hear her being like, "Help me," but it's like there is somebody talking, but you can't hear what it is.
Right.
Yeah, so I know you can't tell, like everybody handles grief differently, but so you can't like tell what someone's actually thinking when they're freaking out like this, but to me it seems like she has like like hyped herself up and she's just, I mean there's no crying, there's just like I don't know. It seems suspicious to me, and I know that the 911 operator did not hang up the phone because she said that she thought that the call sounded rehearsed. And so that's why it kept recording, or she didn't hang up, and so then she kept calling her name, and still she was like, I was going to get whatever this phone call had to give me because this it just sounded rehearsed and suspicious to me.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, the following year, the audio was analyzed by a company called Aerospace Corps, and they said that you could hear a male voice say, like, this is what they found, that a male voice said, "We're not speaking to you." And then Patsy said, "What have you done? Jesus, help me." And then a third voice, and they said this was a youthful voice. And it says, what did you find? But this at first wasn't even released. And then, like, through a court order or something, like, somebody got it released. So it was like years and years and years later that they were like, oh, this is what we found. So after this call, Patsy starts calling friends to come over. So she calls all the friends that were over at their neighbor's house that night. So it's like all of these people come to this crime scene, which is not okay.
Yeah.
They're contaminating everything. So she calls a bunch of friends over, and so by 6 a.m. the police arrive. Burke is then taken to a friend's house. So he's just, like, removed from the house. He says that he was asleep the whole time. He was awoken by cops looking for his sister and shining a flashlight into his room. And he was woken up, and he was like, what's happening? And then just taken to a friend's house. This is what he said. So 8 o'clock rolls around. Mm-hmm. And the ransom note said, I'm going to call you between 8 and 10 a.m. to instruct you on delivery of the money. So the cops are there, and neither John or Patsy are waiting by the phone during these times. They are separated. Patsy is being consoled by her friends in the living room, and John is, like, walking around. He was going through his mail. He was on the phone with somebody, like, going into his study by himself. He disappeared for an hour or two, and no one knew where he was. Like, you would think that they must have not believed this letter, because they called the police right away when it says do not or she's gonna die, and then they weren't even waiting for a call. So it's like, did you not even believe this letter, or you didn't believe it because you wrote it? So 8 and like 10 o'clock goes by. So the time frame that they were supposed to receive a call goes by. They don't seem to care. The detective or FBI agent Linda Arndt, which we'll talk about more, and she has a video. I'm gonna play an interview where she thinks she knows who did it. But she noticed that those are the mental notes that she made, because she was really the only one with him. She kept calling for backup, and they were like, oh, we're in a meeting this morning, it's day after Christmas. And so she was, like, the only one there, and with all of the friends and the family and everything. And so by, like, 1 p.m., to get just some things happening, she told John, she said, hey, why don't we do, like, a top to bottom, like, complete extensive search? Like, why don't we go together so I can make sure that we have searched the whole house? So he immediately grabs his friend and runs down to the basement without this FBI agent. He goes straight to the basement. So there, there's a huge house too. So they go to this wine cellar, and he just runs down there with his friend. His friend's behind him. He swings open the door. The lights are off, and he yells, I found her. She's covered under a blanket as well. Ugh. So if the lights are off and she's under a blanket, how do you know? Do you have night vision, John? No, you don't. So yeah. And that was a mental note Linda made. She's like, and the friend said, he said the lights were off. He opened the door and immediately said, I found her. And so his friend starts yelling, call 911, we need an ambulance, she's down here. So her body had reached rigor mortis. And I'll explain what that is. It's when between 6 and 8 hours after someone has died, your body goes stiff. Mm-hmm. You are, like, stiff as a statue. So she was found with her arms tied above her head. She was found laying with her arms above her head. So she went into rigor mortis into that state. So she was stuck like that. So John carried her up. Oh, this is the like, cellar door, and then the wine cellar where she was found. So he carries her up like this, like a statue. Like, it's not someone related to him. Like, he didn't want to touch her. Like, he's carrying her away from his body. So weird like that. Like, you would think even if she is stiff that you would be holding her, that you would maybe be, like, crying where you found her, like, not picking her up immediately and bringing her when she's obviously dead. So he lays her down on the floor. He takes a duct tape off her mouth immediately, and he tries to untie. There's a cord on each of her wrists and a cord around her neck. And Patsy starts shrieking and crying, lays a blanket over her daughter. She's sobbing over her. So Linda Arndt was she was present when John brought JonBenet up the stairs. And she says in an interview that the moment, like when he laid her down, she knelt down next to JonBenet and took her pulse. And she said her and John were like face to face. And he said, "Is she dead?" And she was like, "Yeah." And she said in that moment that he locked eyes with her, she reached for her gun because she felt like the killer was in the house. So here is the interview that she gives. And just like the look on her face to her eyes, like you can tell that this woman is not making this up.
Nearly 3 years after the murder of JonBenet Ramsey, the case remains unsolved. But the detective who first handled the case has no questions about who is guilty.
I know who killed JonBenet. There's no doubt in my mind who killed JonBenet. And while this investigation is still ongoing, I don't think it's appropriate that I say that name out loud.
Linda Arndt was the first detective on the scene at the Ramsey house on December 26, 1996, the morning John and Patsy Ramsey had reported their 6-year-old daughter JonBenet missing. Arndt was the only officer there for much of the day. She later would be roundly criticized, vilified in the press as responsible for a bungled investigation. Now she's speaking out to set the record straight, telling her side of that dramatic day 3 years ago. It all began with a call at 6:30 in the morning from her sergeant.
He said there's been a kidnapping. It involves a 6-year-old girl. There was a ransom note, a 2.5-page ransom note, and according to the ransom note, there was going to be a phone call from the author, and they were supposed to call between 8 and 10 a.m. So I was supposed to get to the house for purposes of monitoring the phone call.
8:10 a.m., Arndt arrived at the Ramsey home and meets John Ramsey for the first time.
How did he strike you?
Cordial.
Cordial? Mm-hmm. Upset?
Cordial.
Distraught?
Cordial.
Did it strike you at all that that was behavior that was unusual for somebody whose child was just kidnapped?
It's been my experience that people respond to trauma in different ways. So if someone has a response that is different from mine, I don't put judgment to it. I'll just note it.
And that is what she says she did all morning, make mental notes of all things curious, including, she says, the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey remained apart in separate rooms for most of the day. That at one point, she says John Ramsey took time out in the middle of the crisis to read his mail.
I remember seeing John in the kitchen, looking through his mail, and I made a note that he was looking at his mail, and then I wondered, where did your mail come from?
Isn't it possible maybe he was opening the mail looking for a clue from the kidnapper?
I don't know, and I don't speculate. It's a piece of information that I see. It's something that I note.
You thought it was unusual, however.
I can say that it stuck out.
10 a.m., the deadline imposed by the writer of the ransom note for a telephone call.
10 o'clock comes and goes, and there's no acknowledgement within the house from anyone that the deadline imposed by the author of the ransom note has come and gone.
Nobody said it's 10 o'clock and the kidnappers haven't called?
Nobody said that.
Was that something else you took note of?
Absolutely.
By 10:30 in the morning, Arndt was the only police officer in the house with John and Patsy Ramsey, their pastor, and 4 family friends. As they waited for news, the tension was mounting. Arndt called her station house for backup repeatedly, but none had arrived.
How many times did you call the police department asking where your backup was and what was going on?
Well, I remember at least 2 calls. Both times I was told everybody's in a meeting. They got your message, and that was it.
Were you feeling pressure being in charge of a group this large and with anxiety that high?
I felt tremendous pressure.
1:01 p.m. Although the house had already been searched by patrolmen before she arrived, Arndt says that in order to break the building tension, she asked John Ramsey and his friend Fleet White to search the house again, top to bottom, looking for anything out of place. She says she gave them specific instructions not to touch anything. She says John Ramsey headed straight to the basement. She heard Fleet White scream for an ambulance, and then a chilling discovery. For Arndt, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place.
And I see John Ramsey carrying JonBenet up the last 3 steps from the basement. And my mind exploded. And everything that I had noted that morning that stuck out instantly made sense. And JonBenet was clearly dead. Then she's been dead for a while. I ordered him to put JonBenet down. I knelt next to her and I leaned down to her face. And John leaned down opposite me. And his face was just inches from mine. And we had a nonverbal exchange that I will never forget. And he asked if she was dead. And I said, yes, she's dead. And I told him to go back to the room and to dial 911. And as we looked at each other, I remember, and I wore a shoulder holster, tucking my gun right next to me and consciously counting, I've got 18 bullets.
Why did you do that?
Because I didn't know if we'd all be alive when people showed up. I said everything made sense in that instance. And I knew what happened.
Do you think your fear was well-founded?
You bet I do. There's no doubt in my mind.
To this day?
Never wavered.
You were afraid because you thought the killer was still in the house.
I knew it.
Absolutely?
Absolutely.
1:10 p.m., Detective Arndt moved JonBenet's body from the hallway to the living room.
John Ramsey came back into the living room and he grabbed a throw that was on the back of a chair and he says, could you please cover her body? And as he's saying it, he's already put the blanket on top of her.
Arndt would later be harshly criticized for 2 key decisions, asking...
Okay, so what do you think about that? The woman who was literally there that morning.
Well, first and foremost, have you ever seen the movie Silence of the Lambs? Or no?
No, and I never will. It's way
my
too scary.
God. Yeah, no, Jodie Foster's character, like, it looks exactly and sounds
Really?
exactly like that woman, yes. Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting just to hear her and see her from her perspective. Like, I could just tell the way she's telling the story that she could still see the whole scene in her head, like everything. It just seems like she seems very distrusting of the dad. She does. I don't know if she says that. I know we only saw a portion, but does she say she thinks it was him?
No, she never says who she thinks. She says that she's like, I cannot say it. I'll never speak the person's name that I think it is. Like,
But
I'll
she
never
definitely
say.
at least says that it was someone
She
who was
thinks
in the
it's John.
house.
Yeah, and by what she says, like, she definitely thinks it's John. Like, watching her, this interview makes me go towards him more. Like, she was scared of him. She counted the number of bullets she had, thinking, oh my God, he did this to her. Like, he's going to kill us all.
Well, yeah, and like she was saying, like, oh, he was cordial. He didn't seem nervous or scared or anything, like, when I arrived.
Yeah, like, I
So-
imagine her getting to the house and him opening the door and be like, hi, I'm John, nice to meet you. And her being like, what the hell? Your daughter's missing. Like,
Yeah.
you know, expect someone to open the door and be freaking out. And he's
Right.
just, yeah. Okay, so her autopsy was done the next day. And her cause of death was strangulation and a skull fracture. So her wrists were tied together with a cord. And then there was also a garrote wrapped around her neck. So this is a picture of a garrote. Have you ever heard of a garrote before?
No.
Yeah, I would always say it when I read it on the Reddit page, like Garrett or whatever, but it's pronounced garrote. So it looks like this. So you have like 2 sticks on one side and a cord so that you can strangle somebody. Like, you can pull those 2 sticks and literally kill somebody. And it's like an
What
easy
is
way to do
it
it.
used for? Like,
It was used back in the day as like a torture device, like back in like medieval times and all.
Oh,
like,
so
yeah.
it doesn't. Oh, okay. I was thinking maybe it's like a gardening tool or something, and
Oh
somebody
no,
just.
it's made like this, so you can make this. So somebody made this for JonBenet with her mom's like broken paintbrush. Like took the paintbrush and like tied the string around it, and like they could pull the paintbrush. So that's how she was killed. So I think the autopsy stated that she was actually killed from the skull fracture. So she had like an 8.5-inch skull fracture.
Oh, so it wasn't even from this. This didn't even kill her. It was the head fracture.
No, I think the strangulation killed her, but whatever she was hit with, like, obviously knocked her out, or but I think strangulation was the final. Well, I can go into everything that happened after, but now that we know everything, I just wanted to talk about like the things that make sense for like if it was Patsy, if it was John, if it was Burke. So first we'll go to John. Could it have been John who did this? So a lot of people think there's proof that she was sexually assaulted. Linda Arndt also said that she looked at the autopsy reports. She saw the pictures of like, or I guess she saw like when they pulled her skin back from her skull, like you could see the crack in the skull and everything. And she said that it looked like she had been repeatedly sexually assaulted in her, like looking at her private area. So, but the like coroner said that there was no proof, so that's kind of back and forth. And she had been like wetting the bed, and I think like defecating in the bed, like going number 1, number 2, and when you do that, that can be a sign of sexual assault. So there's a lot of people think that she was regularly sexually assaulted, and so you know the number one. There was unknown male DNA in her underwear. So that's what a lot of people think. Oh, it was, and this DNA was tested, and they ruled out everybody from the family. So they were thinking, okay, it's no one from the family. It's somebody else from the outside. But a lot of times DNA on clothing is from like the manufacturer or someone who packaged it or whatever. So a lot of people think that's where the DNA is from, and it's never been matched to anybody. So, and then there's theories with the sexual assault with her father that maybe her father was doing it, she was going to tell, or something he was doing it that night, and you know one thing led to another and he killed her. And then there's theories about like the foreign faction, like maybe that's like a sex ring he was involved in, and people really like, this is like the most like far out theory, is that you know he had this huge sex ring and they're pedophiles and they're just moving the kids back and forth and she was involved in it, and maybe it was him that killed her, or maybe it was somebody from, you know, they just go on and on with those theories. So I think like the sexual assault and the father, that goes like hand in hand, that theory of if it was him that maybe that would be the reason for him to, you know, murder his daughter. And then Patsy, so like I said, JonBenet had been wetting the bed, and so the theory with Patsy, if she did it, that she was super stressed out for the holidays, and JonBenet had maybe wet her bed that night. There was, in her underwear, she had like or her pants that she was wearing, her pajamas, she had peed her pants. But I know when you're killed, you relieve yourself. Like a lot of times, like you relieve yourself, or pretty much every time. So I feel like it could have been from that, but people think that maybe Patsy just freaked out and got pissed and like hit her with something, and that was from the mark on her head, and you know, and then she concocted this plan to make it look like a random person killed her daughter, and she wrote the ransom note and all of that. And then Burke, a lot of people think it's Burke, and I feel like it's like more recently, like a lot of people are like, it was the brother. Like people say online, you could just say it was the brother, and then everyone knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I remember when we were little, the big thing was that it was either the mom or the dad. I don't remember people really thinking, I mean, I'm sure there was people who thought it was the brother, but I remember even me back then, I was like, he's little. I mean, like, okay, yeah, so was JonBenet, but I was like, they're both I mean, I don't know, I guess he's capable, but I just didn't think that at the time.
Yeah. And I think with him, it's like, I think a lot of people think if it was him, it was an accident, and the parents covered it up thinking, we just lost a daughter. We don't want to lose our son. And because they are, kind of like socialites in their community and they care about appearances, especially Patsy, that they thought maybe we will just try to blame it on somebody mysterious and just throw so many loops in there with the ransom notes, so many things that don't make sense, to just move the attention off of it being Burke, so that way they can at least have one child, because they couldn't,
Right.
fathom maybe having to send him off. It's not like he would have gotten arrested. He would have gotten like mental help, but apparently he was like known to have anger outbursts, and he did hit her with a golf club one time. He struck JonBenet with a golf club. So the theory here is that he was eating the pineapple before bed. So in the crime scene photos, there is a glass of pineapple right on the table, and there's also a large flashlight that is in the kitchen, and that flashlight lines up with her skull fracture, but there are no fingerprints on the flashlight or the batteries, and that struck detectives as odd, because the flashlight, it's kind of like, I don't know, like one that's like easy to grip, they kind of like have like the ridges and everything. So apparently that's not conducive to hold fingerprints. But the batteries, some people think that they were like, okay, this is the murder weapon. Let's put it out in the open. Let's not try to like get rid of it, because that'll look suspicious. But let's just wipe it down so there's no DNA. So they think that, Burke got pissed that she ate pineapple. There was undigested pineapple in her system, so she did have pineapple that night. I think they couldn't figure out if maybe she had it at the party, but it's like that was a favorite snack, pineapple and milk. They would like drink milk and eat pineapple, and so many people think that is disgusting. I do too. I couldn't imagine those two, but it was just like, their family like favorite snack as kids.
Yeah. It's funny, a little off topic, but there's this place, it's like a cafeteria place, and it's called like Mormon pie, and it comes with cottage cheese and pineapple, and it's very popular. It's a southern thing.
Okay.
It's a southern thing. Well, I know they're from Colorado, so not the South, but that is a southern snack.
I think John is from Atlanta, so
that's right.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely a southern snack. So
okay, yeah. So, that bowl was out, and they questioned Burke. He was questioned like a year or two later, and he said, he was like, I didn't eat that night. Like, I don't remember. I have no idea. That's what's.
How old was
like,
he, the brother?
During this? 9.
Oh, okay. So they have kind of a significant age difference.
Yeah, 6 and 9. So they thought maybe she ate some of his pineapple. He got angry, hit her with the flashlight, knocks her out. The parents find her, and then, I mean, even with like, I don't know, but that's just like crazy to think that your daughter accidentally dies at the hands of your son, and then you go an extra step and tie a garrote on her and everything like that. But I don't know, maybe they wanted to throw everybody out. It's just, that's what makes it such a crazy mystery, because there's so many ways you can turn, avenues you can go down. So as far as what happened afterwards up until present day, because there's still current like news on this, things are still happening. It's always been an ongoing open investigation. So in 1997, that's when JonBenet's parents gave their first interview. So it was New Year's Day 97. So she died Christmas 96. So this was soon after. But they were telling the Boulder police at the time that they couldn't interview them yet because they were too distraught and too upset. But yet they went on CNN and gave an interview. So the Boulder police were like, that's weird. And so the police also said they were ensuring the community that like there was no killer at large. They were like, there's not a threat to anybody, like everybody's fine. And Patsy got on CNN and she was like, there is a killer on the loose. If I were a resident of Boulder, I would tell my friends to keep your babies close to you, like there's someone out there. And she's just freaking out, and she says, America is suffering because we lost faith in the American family. We are a Christian, God-fearing family. We love our children. We would do anything for our children. She was like bringing religion into it. And so when this interview was released, the Boulder police, the family had been in Atlanta. And so the Boulder police sent 5 detectives to Atlanta to interview them right away. So then in April 97, the Boulder police, the district attorney's office, said that John and Patsy were the main targets of the investigation. So by the next year, they were like, these people, and I wonder, like, to go back in time and like watch the news, because this is what I remember. I don't remember her death and everything. I remember the news talking about them being in court, and then I remember growing up thinking, oh yeah, her parents did do it. I thought that they got them in trouble for that, because I remember them talking about the phone call in the news and everything. So they got like a grand jury together, but then it was dismissed by October 1999. The district attorney said that there wasn't enough evidence to bring them any charges. And then that same year, Burke is then 12, and he was ruled out as a suspect. So then they're kind of like free, and they don't have to go to court. They don't have to face, maybe getting put in jail for her murder. So, in the year 2000, the parents published a book called The Death of Innocence, and they gave a sit-down interview with Barbara Walters, and they were maintaining their innocence. They said no one in the family killed her. So in 2006, Patsy died of cancer. So she's no longer with us, so maybe she knows what happened. Maybe she's reunited with JonBenet. Like, crazy to think about. So in 2008, new advancements in touch DNA cleared the Ramsey family, and then the Boulder authorities sent a letter to them apologizing because the DNA had like cleared them. And so the other thing is that the family, at least John, has still pursued justice. Like, he still has petitioned the courts and all this stuff. And usually when you have somebody murdered in a family and like their family member murdered them, they usually don't push to find the killer. Like, we talked about this in the Murdaugh case. Like, they pushed to find the killer for a second, and then they were like, okay.
Right.
So in this, it's like he's still pushing, but maybe he is on purpose to keep his name clear, or maybe he's like, I don't know who the hell did this.
Well, now you're making me feel like it wasn't someone in the house.
I know. But then when you go back to all the evidence of like,
yeah, the letter is
like
the most damning thing, I think.
Yeah, and then you listen to the detective Linda, and you're like, oh my god, someone in this house did it. But then you're like, wait, what? So then by 2015, John Ramsey sat down with Barbara Walters again to revisit the case, and then the following year, that's when Burke sat down with Dr. Phil. And that went viral when he was on Dr. Phil, because he was like nervous smiling and just awkward, but people were like, I do the same thing when I feel awkward, and how do you think he would feel? He was just like put into the spotlight at a young age, and I'm sure like anywhere he goes, like people are like, what's your name? And he's like, Burke Ramsey. Like, everyone's like, oh my god. So maybe he's weird because of that. So then present day, November of last year, John kept petitioning the Boulder police to test the DNA, because there's like a new DNA testing system, something that was not around back then, and they really want to get the DNA tested this way, to see if it pulls up any matches. And this came out like late last year, and there was all these articles, and they were like, oh my god, new DNA testing, like, we're gonna figure this out. But as far as we know right now, the police are like, we're not gonna do that. So
well,
I don't know.
What are they DNA testing is what I want to know. Like, what is it that they're testing at this point?
I think like the touch DNA that was on her, the DNA in the underwear, like any DNA that they found on her. But all they've ever said is that there's unknown male DNA in her underwear. So I don't think there was any DNA on her. I think it's the underwear DNA that's what has never matched anybody. And everybody who's confessed, there's been crazy people who's confessed, and there's been like the Santa Claus that was at the party that night. People thought he was it. I mean, there's been men who are like obsessed with JonBenet, and they have like shrines to her, and they made up this whole story about how they did it, and it's just so crazy. So yeah, like, if I ever get to heaven, I'm gonna
Hello?
I can know one thing.
Oh,
If
sorry.
I can know one thing.
Wait, say that last part again. Sorry.
I was going to say, if I get to heaven and God's like, you can know one answer to life, something that happened in life or whatever. And, most people would be like, why were we created? What's the meaning of life? And I will be like, who the fuck killed my girl JonBenet? Seriously. I'd be like, picture, she's up there running around and free and in no pain, and she's so freaking cute, and it's horrible and it's scary, and it's like, what in the heck? But that's where we are now. So like, what do you think? Who do you think done it?
Well, you didn't say specifically who you think did it.
Oh yeah. So before putting this episode together, I have thought it was Burke for a really long time. And I mean, part of me does. I don't think I'm 100% on anybody. You know, listening to the Linda Arndt interview makes me feel like it was John, but I don't really subscribe
well, he
to the
also
theory.
said some creepy stuff, right? I think I vaguely remember him saying, like, that JonBenet was like a sex kitten or something like that. Or it was like in a Barbara... Did you see the Barbara Walters interview? Like,
No.
Barbara is like criticizing him for making kind of salacious comments about JonBenet.
They call JonBenet a 6-year-old Lolita, a pun-sized sex kitten.
The people that look at these things and see something perverted, that didn't come from JonBenet. That's coming from the viewer, not the child.
I can see a lot of people who think it's him use that as their evidence. But if I had to pick like my theory, it would be that Burke got pissed at the pineapple and hit her with the flashlight. I don't know. Maybe it's because so many people say it, but like, there's pictures of the pineapple, there's pictures of the flashlight, and they even said that Patsy said that flashlight was always in John's like safe or something, and they had no idea how it got there. And the fact that there's no DNA prints on the battery, there was nothing they could pick up from the outside. I just feel like they thought, we don't want to risk getting rid of this, so let's keep it in plain sight and let's just wipe it down. And if they figure out it's the weapon, then what are they going to do? And they might not figure out it's the weapon at all. And they still didn't. They have no idea exactly what she got hit with, but I think that it makes the most sense to me that Burke did this like by accident, and they thought, crap,
And the parents
like,
covered it up.
Yeah, because they didn't want to lose both kids. But and you just have to think that at least John knew that she was down there too. So then when you think about them just leaving her down there in the cold and dead, and when they're upstairs making phone calls, just like pretending, just knowing that she's down there, like, so that's why I feel like John and Patsy like knew where she was. They wrote the letter together. They did all this together is what I think.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, the ransom note just made no damn sense. And then, like, there was never going to be a phone call. There wasn't any drop place for this money. It's like, okay, they were asking for money, and then they just killed her without getting any money from you. It's
and
like,
she was always dead in the house too. So
Right.
it's like, even if it wasn't them and you just go off the ransom letter, it's like, okay, well, she wasn't ever kidnapped. So
right.
yeah,
She was in the house the whole time, and they would have never gotten the money, which is what their intention supposedly was for the whole time. I remember when I was little, I kind of just believed what my mom believed, which was my mom believed it was the mom. Because, I grew up in, I didn't do beauty pageants, but I did the dance ballet circuit thing. And, I grew up around dance moms all the time. My mom was not a dance mom because she, like, for her, me dancing was just like a hobby for me, and she wasn't one of those people who made it like her identity that she's the mom of a little girl dancer. But we had ran into a lot of moms who were like that, like dance moms, very controlling, very like cutthroat. My mom just saw JonBenet in these like pageant circuits and all these photos of her. And also, I think it had come out, like you had said, that Patsy was also like a beauty pageant herself. And I don't know, like maybe she's just trying to vicariously live through JonBenet, and maybe she just JonBenet, like you said, I had heard that also that she had bedwetting problems and stuff. And, maybe she just, I don't know, was controlling JonBenet and just had a difficult time with her and stuff. I don't really know. But yeah, for the longest time, I guess I just thought it was the mom. But now, especially after this, I'm like, I have no idea. I definitely think it was someone in the house because, like, for me, the ransom letter is the most damning thing. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I feel like I can 100% say it was someone in the house, I think. But I can't 100% say exactly who I think it was because there's just so many twists and turns. There's so many things that make sense and then don't make sense. Like, I was on this Reddit page for a year and I literally had to leave it because I had read every single thing and I was like, oh my God, I know absolutely every single thing and I still can't come to like a good conclusion. That's why I feel like they threw a lot of things in there to give reasonable doubt already, you know, to make things confusing. Because if you think this happened that evening, like around midnight, they had 5 hours. They had, or maybe 6 hours, maybe 7 hours. Like, they had that entire night. And the fact that Patsy kept her clothes on, had the same clothes and makeup as the night before. Girl, you never went to bed. She never went to sleep. They stayed up the whole night practicing the no. I mean, if they're thinking like, if you imagine them sitting down and being like, what do? We don't want to lose our son. Or I don't know if it wasn't him at all, them thinking like, we need to save face. We need to get out of this. Let's play the victim. Let's act like somebody did this.
Yeah. I'm thinking like, I'm even playing the Burke situation out in my head. Like, let's say he hit her with the flashlight. She's bleeding. She's unconscious. I mean, my first instinct, I wouldn't even think about protecting Burke in that moment. I would be like, let's call 911.
I know.
You know, and that's why I'm like, see, and that gives me doubts too, because I'm like, obviously they love their daughter, and, you know, I'm like, wouldn't they have tried to save her?
I know. So then it's like, if he did it, then he would have had to do the garrote, which people had said that he was in Boy Scouts at the time, which I'm pretty sure is true, and that they learned how to do a garrote. But other people have been like, no, because it's literally a strangulation device. Like, why would you learn that in Boy Scouts? But I'm wondering if some people can tie a garrote without realizing that they've made a garrote. You know what I mean? Like, if he was trying to like pull her or something, or like, I don't know, but then you have to think like she had to have been dead already.
I was gonna say,
okay,
that's the only way I could see them wanting to cover up the tracks, is that she had to have been dead already. It would not have been like, oh shit, she's bleeding. Because if she was just bleeding, it'd been like, okay, well, obviously we're just gonna call the ambulance. Yeah, but she had to, I guess, would have already been dead.
Yeah, I know. And then like I literally am just thinking to myself, maybe it was someone who gave it. Like, I'm just so back and forth, because when you think of the way she died, it's like with that garrote and the broken paintbrush and the way the knots were around her wrists and everything, it's like, was this
kind of sophisticated? Like, yeah, that's kind of sophisticated. I'm willing to believe that Burke hit her in the head and maybe give her a concussion. That much, yes,
could have,
sure, any of them. But the garrote thing, see, that's the other thing where I'm just like, I don't know, that's kind of sophisticated. I don't know that I'd be willing to believe that a little kid can know how to do that, even accidentally. It seems a little too.
I know, and I feel like when you. I mean, I don't feel like I know this now from watching so much true crime, that when you strangle somebody, I mean, this is with your hands, but I mean, with the garrote too, like, it takes a little bit. Strangling somebody is very intimate. It takes a while. You can't, like, you have to look the person in the eyes. You have to be with it. Like, and I'm just like, would her father do that? Like, I don't get that picture of him, that he hated her so much that he would do something. I feel like I see the hitting on the head was like an accident. But then it's like, if the strangulation was how she actually died, like, maybe they thought she was dead, but then it's like, well, you actually killed her by the
that'd be fucked up if that was the case, because maybe she could have gotten sent to the hospital and maybe just, you know, could have recovered. But if they thought she was dead and they're like, okay, we need to cover it up, make it look like it was a strangulation, but you actually killed her, then that's like,
I know
that's like even more tragic somehow.
I know. So this is why I need to know the answer. I need somebody to tell me, and I hope it gets figured out in.
That's what I'm curious too. I'm like, will we ever get an answer for this? Yeah, but and I feel like maybe no. I wonder if it was. I wonder if it was committed now would it make a difference? I know we have better technology, but if it was committed by someone in the house, I mean, they live there and all the objects, they live in that house, they would have DNA of them. So I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, I do think though, if it did happen today, that maybe it would be solved or something, because we do have better technology. But also the detective that was there, like, she was trying to call for backup, and there's loads of people there, and that disrupted so much of the DNA, and people touched her, and like John grabbing her immediately. And then you have to think, like, you know, is it because he did this and that's why he grabbed her immediately? And how could he say, oh my God, I found her? Like, you never looked there before, so then you never actually did a full search. Like, I think when the cops got there, he's like, yeah, I did a search, and then the cops did like a basic search. I don't know. That's why it's
Did
just,
you see
it's crazy.
Those theories that she's Katy Perry?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if she would have looked like that, because she was obviously very beautiful.
I know.
As a little girl, she would have definitely been beautiful as an adult.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So we'll just never know.
sad.
And it makes my brain just like want to explode, because I just you keep going down these paths. Like, you go down John and the sex ring, and then you're like, well, what about Patsy? What about, and it's
well,
just
even
freaking
if
insane, but
even if John, he has made some really creepy comments about JonBenet, like the sex kitten stuff, and that she was so beautiful and all that. Even if that, I'm like, he would want her around in theory. If you're following that line of thought, it's like, well, he wouldn't want to kill her. He'd want to keep her around.
Yeah.
So,
and so they're thinking, like, maybe, you know, or maybe somebody was hiding in the house, like, when they were away that day, when they went to their friend's house for the party all Christmas Day. Like, you know, maybe someone was hiding in the house already.
And then they wrote the letter.
I know. It's like you go down one path, and then something
there's
doesn't make
something
sense.
that says no.
Yeah. That's why I like to believe that they all did. They knew someone in the house did it, and they all knew the other person did it, and they purposely tried to throw these things in there to confuse us, and it's still confusing us to this day. But then at the same time, it's like, it's giving people too much credit, and it's like, some people aren't that smart. But I don't know. I'm like, you had all night to figure this out. 5 hours is a long time. It was like the least amount of time that they had to figure this out, if she did end up like accidentally dying, or I don't know. So that is the end of this episode. Tell us who you think did it. Send us your theories. Love to hear them, but I've probably heard every single one, because I have been on that Reddit page too much.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time. Bye. Okay, let me stop the recording.
To watch the video version of this podcast, search The Scandalicious Podcast on YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Scandalicious Podcast.
If you have an episode suggestion, our email is in the show notes.
Thanks for listening.